one end of the country to the other, at hundreds of tracks, north, south, east, west. Millions of people come to watch thousands of cars try to get from one end of the quarter-mile track to the other in the shortest possible time, seemingly by making as much noise as they possibly can. That's drag racing, as it first meets the eye and the ear. Streaks of color roaring past with deafening noise and eye-smarting, nostril-pinching clouds of smoke and fumes.
Our reunion was on July the 1st of 2023, and the last time they raced was the end of September of 1977. The last week in September, because the following week we went to York US 30 for the bracket finals, and some of us went pretty far into the finals, but we had a great representation. Peterson's, I believe out of 32 teams we came in about 8th or 9th, which compared to some of the bigger tracks, that was pretty darn good. 1966 was the first year that the raceway was opened, and they brought some big crowds that first year. They brought some big names in, and some professional people that used to run funny cars and dragsters came down and graced the track and really kicked it off, made it a big success. Well, the track itself, the paved road was nearly a mile long, and probably about 300-400 feet of it was in the pits, and then of course 1,320 feet of it was the drag strip. And then everything after that was shut down. And the reason Pete's was so well liked is it had fresh pavement, and it had one of the largest shutdown areas anywhere in the country. It was actually really an airport, but they had it paved and they had it done right, and the shutdown was what really was the benefit, because when you brought dragsters in and funny cars that were going over 250 miles an hour, you needed that area. Actually, the speedway completely encompassed the track. I mean, it was that big. I mean, it was amazing at one time, you know, to have that board track as they did. When we would go up on the hill, you could oftentimes see some of the boards and the planks that were still left that had rotted. Altoona was pretty famous for that. The Duesenbergs the brothers used to come here and race, and many others. Well, we started kicking this around. We had lost so many of our former racers to various ailments and just natural death, because, you know, if you raced at Pete's, you had to be just about 70 years old, because when they closed in 77, you had to be 16. So we figured that we'd get a lot of the drivers to come, and we put out the invite. We used Facebook a lot, and it really worked. We had 50 responses, and of course, July 1st turned out to be a monsoon. We all got drenched, but out of the 50, 40 showed up, and we took a great shot of all the reunion invitees, and that's what we did. We made sure that we knew that these people raced there, and that they actually had cars, and some of them brought the actual cars, and that was really neat. We had some outstanding things take place. I think probably the most stunning thing that took place was when Barry Wright pulled up with his wife Sue, and they got out of the car and they were just kind of shooting the breeze and talking. And as it was, Sue was a Garrett, and one of the more famous guys that raced down at Pete's was Dave Garrett. He ran a dragster. And Sue said, you know, my dad used to do this. I said, yeah, what's his name? And she said, Dave Garrett. I said, oh. I said, come on over here a minute. I showed her the poster that Jack White did for us, and it had a picture of a dragster on it, and it was Dave Garrett's dragster. I said, now I want you to walk over here and see something. And here Wally Quarry recreated the dragster. It's actually the car. He just lengthened it a little bit, and there it was. There was her dad's car, and so neat. They got her to stand beside it and picture it, and also got her to sit in it. And it kind of brought tears to her eyes, and it was an amazing moment because she had no clue that her dad's real car was going to be there. You know what? I just thank God he was able to make it. The man came on a walker and stood the whole time. That I could give him so much credit. Dick raced hard for a lot of years. Always came up with some kind of different kind of vehicle. I mean, it was a funny car, a rail, even that Volkswagen with the Pontiac motor in it. I'll never forget that. And man, he was a competitor. He was always a competitor and worked very hard in his own profession, a body shop and mechanic shop, and just a credit to us all.
Sitting there. Oh, they had good stuff down there.
I was gonna say,
even
oh yeah, a lot of cars.
Jenkins was down there.
Really?
Strickler was down there, and then I can't remember the guys make the headers. Oh shit! Anyhow, down in York.
Yeah.
McCloskey really.
Headers.
McCloskey still, he really did drive that car. People didn't think he did, but he really was. He was the driver of that car.
Yeah.
Jerry Stahl.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he used to tell people he drove that car, and everybody said, bullshit. No, he was the driver. He really was.
Well, did Peterson sort of be a door that opened for you for a lot of these drivers and later on to get you business and things like that?
I've been in it, 60 years anyhow.
Kirk showed up with him, and Kirk built a car that tribute to the Shaw brothers. He has a Henry J, which is pretty neat. And the Shaw brothers raced a Henry J back in the day and very successful with it. And Rick's one of the people that passed on. We certainly do miss him. Well, the Ferretta family owned Valley Motors down on 16th Street and Pleasant Valley Boulevard. And they believed on racing on Sunday and selling on Monday. They provided a very professional-looking team. They come down. Most guys were bringing their cars down on tow bars or small trailers. These guys brought roll-up trucks and drive-up haulers, and made a very professional appearance. They've always purchased former Sox and Martin cars, which were extremely famous on the National Hot Rod Association circuit. And these cars were fast and beautiful. And Valley Motors raced them. Debbie Ferretta was somebody that was very competitive in stock class. Her F-Stock automatic Barracuda was a real runner. They ran a 440 GTX. They ran a Hemi Roadrunner. And, of course, they had Mike McMahon driving a Hemi Cuda 68. And all of them ran great. And one of the other neat things that they did was they would have symposiums at their dealership where they'd bring Ronnie Sox and Mr. Martin in, and young people could go down there and get their fill. I mean, they really learned a lot about drag racing because these were two of the best in the world.
Jungle Pam coming there.
Well, that was his wife, and they ran a car back in the day called Brutus. It was a 65 GTO with a Hemi, and then of course they started bringing the funny car around the Camaro. And, Connie Kalita was there with the Bounty. Fast Eddie Sharpman came many times. When the East Coast Funny Car Circuit would show up, we'd bring some big names in. And then, of course, the East Coast Superstock Circuit ran there on a regular basis as well. So whenever they had a big show like that, the old boy Pete would advertise it, and he'd bring in 4,000 or 5,000 people at a show. I mean, he did some real promotions down there. I'm told that she did, and of course she drew a lot of attention no matter where she went. She was always down at York US 30, but Linda came one time with the Hearst Olds. We haven't picked a date out yet, but I think we're going to try to get away from July because it's so volatile. We are planning on joining in with the Blair County Antique Club. They're reserving a spot for about 40 of us over at the September 2nd affair that they have downtown. We're going to be right behind Heritage Plaza with a group of Peterson race cars. I just want to say it's always been great to be able to drag race. A lot of guys used to do it on the street. Thank goodness we had Pete's to do it, because back in the day there were muscle cars everywhere, and we kept it legit. and we had a lot of fun doing it.